Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Restoring Native Prairies, Bringing Back the Bees. Our presenter this morning is Jim Willis, co-founder and president of Wildlife Habitat Federation.
Good morning.
Good morning, Jim. Jim was raised in an agricultural community in Northeast Louisiana, where cotton and other agricultural crops were the primary sources of income. He has a BS in agribusiness from Louisiana Tech University, a master's in agricultural economics from Mississippi State, a certificate in Latin American studies from U.S. State Department's Foreign Services Institute, and served as a foreign service officer in 3 U.S. embassies. Was the agricultural economist, Soviet specialist, and rice analyst for the Foreign Agricultural Service, co-owned 2 farm equipment dealerships, was the director of foreign programs for USA Rice Council, co-founder and president international programs for U.S. Rice Producers Association, and co-founder, president, trustee of Wildlife Habitat Federation, the hat he is wearing today. He has received wildlife conservation awards from county and regional state and water conservation service, Texas Parks and Wildlife, and the Houston chapter of Quail Coalition's Fletcher Gibson 3 Lifetime Sportsman Award, Texas Wildlife Association Federation's Conservation Award, and Coastal Prairie Partnership's Dick Benoit Upper Texas Coastal Prairie Conservation Award. And Jim is here to speak to us today about restoring native prairies. Jim?
Thank you. I hope I can live up to that long resume you just made about me. Anyway, I hope you can understand me. I'm sorry, Rebecca having a problem with her speech this morning. Maybe you'll have trouble understanding me. I unfortunately spent too much time in the countryside of Louisiana. But anyway, let's get into it. I'm here to tell you today that restoring native prairies or prairie land, it trumps all other practices as far as I'm concerned in conserving our precious natural resources, that being soil, water, air, wildlife. And there are some who would argue, I guess today, that COVID-19 we should add open spaces to those things we need as far as natural resources. Open spaces are becoming more and more precious because I guess mechanized farming has taken over so much of the land, and so has the creeping concrete of urbanization. Anyhow, reason I say that is because when Europeans first came to America, what we know as the continental United States, that land mass was covered with about 40% of it was covered with native grasses and forests. 40%. Of course, now today less than 1% of that remains. So it's bringing back that land, that precious native prairie land is going to make, it's going to improve our natural resources. And I call that in my presentation is bringing back the bees. Now, what do I mean by bees? And it includes, yes, honeybees and bumblebees and other types of bees and other pollinators like butterflies, as in monarch butterflies are good pollinators. All those pollinators a lot of their names start with bees. It includes bunch grass, as you see in this cover slide, bunch grass being blue stems, like little blue stem, big blue stem. This picture shows you some pictures of yellow Indian grass stands out. So there's all kinds of bees we're trying to bring back. The bees, I might add, also include the bluebonnet and bluebells and all types of wild flowers classified as native forbs. And there's just a whole array of those types of colorful flowers. Yeah, it might include also a Brittany Spaniel pointing Bob White quail. When we purchased our ranch in 1999, an area west of Houston, I was told that, yeah, we had some bees, but they were the wrong bees. They were Bermuda grass, Bahia grass, both imported invasive species of tame grasses. Bermuda grass came from South Africa, Bahia came from South America, places like Argentina. And in this case, those bad bees were supporting some good bees that are helpful if you use them correctly, called bee cattle. But in this picture, this scene is replicated throughout the state and throughout the nation of tame grasses planted to support more and more cattle, too many cattle, and because we, unlike the buffalo that roamed on native grasses, we got fenced in bovines that overeat because we have too many, we stocked it too heavily. So I want to bring those bees back, and we started the process years ago on our ranch, but I didn't. It wasn't after I hadn't failed at first. I learned a lot by trying to use the methodology of fail fast and fix fast. I did more failing than I did fixing. So we, very costly, very time consuming, doing it the wrong way. So I encourage anyone that is working on these prairies, is bringing back this prairie land or any land, to get help. There's lots of good advice out there. There's lots of bad advice. And so we try to catch the folks before they meet up with the people giving the wrong advice. I remember once I had a fellow that was coming by our place, and he saw what we were doing, and I'll show you what the results of what we did in a moment. And he said, "What is that?" I said, "That's native grasses." And I told him the virtues of having native grasses. He had stopped by to help me get some donkeys that got out of the front pasture off the road, and I could see his look of shock when I told him that we were bringing back the natives, and instead of planting more exotic introduced grasses, tame grasses. He said, "Thank goodness I stopped." He said, I was en route to South Texas to plow about 500 acres of native grass. And now I'm going back home. I'm going to leave that intact. Thank goodness I was able to stop him from making that mistake. And so we become ambassadors of conservation. We get people to put in more native grasses. After 5 years of looking at this pasture like it was and changing it, this is what we end up with. Same area, a little different angle, but we allowed that land to rest. It says in Leviticus 25th chapter to let your land rest 1 out of 7 years. And I tell you that it's good to let it rest 2 years when you've had it overgrazed like that land was done to. And yes, that is a cow in the middle of that picture. And almost hidden by the tall grass that came up. When you give that land a chance, a lot of that land is covered with species you didn't know was there, because native grasses and forbs have a covering called pericarp, real hard seed covering. It just sits there for years until it's given a chance to come forth. And you let the sun and come forth and hit those native grass seeds. They react. If they're in they're a lot there, you don't realize that they're there, but they're just waiting for their chance to come forth and germinate. And we did plant native grasses too. We planted some, and we let a lot of it just rest for 2 years. And the result was just unbelievable. Texas A&M researchers found 31 species of grassland birds after we restored that land, our land, and that included quail. One came up to a phenomenal 1 bird per acre in 5 years, and other wildlife, all kinds of other wildlife. We quit using quit using all that, those expensive inputs. Well, actually, I never started using them, but I had, as Shell mentioned, I had sold a lot of equipment to a lot of expensive stuff, tractors and hay balers in my former businesses, to till the land and change it over to the, and I'm guilty of helping as a kid, even putting in coastal Bermuda grass, which has no good benefit for wildlife, and it doesn't support native or bringing back or conserving natural resources. And one thing we learned back in 2010 after we restored this land was it's drought tolerant. It has such deep roots that when all the other grasses die and all of my neighbors are bringing in wherever they can find hay to feed, even in the summertime back in that drought period of 2010, we had grass up to our waist still, because those native grasses have such wonderful roots to support. I say that with the one caveat that you don't overrate it, because because native grasses are more palatable, and you put cattle in them, they're going to go eat the natives first. That's why when you have cattle over grazing land and there's natives there, they're going to eat the natives down before they touch those invasive and introduced grasses. So the main thing I saw, having grown up in a rural community, was the soil change. The soil we had ended up with was not that concrete texture that we found when we bought the place, but instead it was soil that was selling like potting soil you'd buy at a gardening store. It just, you could stick your fingers as deep as you wished into that soil. It was so, the word is friable. It became very friable again. And it was done, that was done because the native grasses, their reaction or interaction with microbial fungi and all the microbes and earthworms came forth, and the soil just changed its texture completely. So that was the most exciting part, because that's the beginning of the process, having rich land again. That's what built the Midwest. That 40,000 acres that man found here when he came into the United States, and then covered with 40% by prairies, and of course we've reduced that down to less than 1% because of mechanized agriculture, and again, and the sprawling concrete that covered it because of urbanization. But all those many species of grass and wildflowers came forth, and we could actually graze if we wished, with the right number of cattle now, not as many as we had before, graze year round without feeding any hay, unless you have what we had a few weeks ago, that big frost. Is good to put some supplemental feeding out for animals, but not something that you have to have. Someone once told me that you got to have hay for ruminants, and I said, "What do you mean?" I said, "Cows have to have hay." I said, "No, they don't if you have native grass." "Oh, that can't be." I said, "Yes, it can." I've never seen a Comanche Indian with a hay baler behind it. A picture of that. Buffalo did just fine without having been fed hay. Of course, they didn't have fences, but if you stock your land correctly, you don't have to have all that supplemental feeding if you have native grass. This is a picture of the good and the bad, of course. The good being what's on the left side of the fence is the cover that wildlife, for example, needs. If you were a ground dwelling bird like a quail, it's pretty obvious that you're not going to fly from the left side of that fence to the right. Wildlife is protected with that cover. I call this picture of that fence my quail-proof fence. There's no reason the quail is going to leave and cross that fence. And I'm not saying that in a boastful manner. It's a fact. But I also learned that you don't brag too much about your conservation conquest or your accomplishments, just like you don't brag on your children and grandchildren, I guess, because they come back to haunt you. But we knew it was working, and we also knew that this little plot I had was not enough. A bird like quail needs 40 acres for home range. what does the population of birds, uh, dick sisel, quail, loggerhead shrikes, meadowlarks, all those kinds of birds, how much land do you need? Well, certainly it's in the thousands of acres. So we realized that we need to help the wildlife and the land. We needed to expand from what we had, and that because of that, and share our knowledge with our neighbors. So because of that idea, we formed the Wildlife Habitat Federation 17 years ago in 2004. And with that nonprofit status, by the way, Shell, let's stop right now. Rebecca, Shell, are y'all able to hear me okay? Is everything fine at this point? I don't hear anything, so I suppose.
We are good. We can hear you.
Okay, fine. Thank you. So we started the Wildlife Habitat Federation in 2004. That year, we also got a large government grant and conservation innovation grant from the Natural Resources Conservation Service of U.S. Department of Agriculture. With that, also, we had assistance from people like Texas Park to Wildlife, Audubon, others pitched in, and as a consequence, we built a 7-mile long wildlife corridor. That corridor went from our ranch all the way through several ranches until it reached the Atwater National Wildlife Refuge, which is 10,000 acres. So we connected 2,000 acres of rangeland to this large refuge, which is outside of course, west of Houston, right below where we live at our ranch. And the reason for connecting to it is because the Atwater Prairie Chicken Refuge is doing as best it can to conserve the Atwater prairie chicken. And in doing so, it's also helping other birds like quail, like dick sisel, like shrikes, and many species. So we figured that, well, our little 2,000 acres and combined with that 10,000, it's gotta help. And it has. And it helps not only the birds, but it helps provide food from other migrating species like I mentioned earlier, the monarch butterfly. It has to have nectar to survive. It has to get its energy to make its migration to and from Mexico. So we have parts that are more covered with nectar species in this long corridor. In other corridors we're trying to build. It's all about connectivity, connecting rangeland, which comprises 95% of the land is owned by private individuals in Texas, and getting those people to connect to one another and then connect to facilities like this Atwater Prairie Chicken Refuge. In doing so, is the only way I see, the fastest way I felt that we could help bring back prairie land. It's not always species like pictures of what I showed earlier of overgrazed, tame grassland, like Bahia grass and Bermuda grass pastures, improved pastures. I say improved, I hate to use that word. I think they're not improved, they're harmed. But anyway, it's not always that we're facing. We're facing, in many cases, a daunting task of removing woody species, invasives like Chinese talon, McCartney rose, yaupon. And so big stuff like that requires big equipment. It's, as I say, a very daunting task when you're facing something like this. You can't even see the ground, and the only things in that area, I mean, deer can't run through it in many cases, or snakes and raccoons may inhabit it, but it's not doing the rancher any good. It's not even doing as good a job of sequestering carbon to help the air, or conserving water, or improving any of the natural resources like grasslands do. So we began that task of removing these, and it looks pretty it's pretty dismal at first when you see this scene. You say, my gosh, I made a mess of things. But over time, in stacking it and burning it, it turns out pretty good in the long run. And it takes a while. But native grasses don't, and native flowers don't come back immediately. As I say, they sleep, they creep, and then they leap once you get them going. And it's nothing more satisfying than seeing the face of a landowner when he sees all these beautiful flowers blooming that weren't there before, because we removed the cover, the heavy cover, and allowed those species to come forth. And for that owner to hear the iconic sound of a bobwhite quail, or see a monarch butterfly caterpillar crawling on some species form, and it makes your heart cry out to if you see that kind of thing occur, and to see that landowner's face. So it makes it worthwhile, and it makes it worthwhile from the standpoint of knowing that those species can't do it on their own. They don't have a vote. It's up to us to do it, to help them along after all the harm we've done as man. Another tool is Dr. Dale Rawlins calls the crest range of conservationist is prescribed burns. This picture shows that the previous video clip showed us burning a part of a checkerboard table of plots. As you can see from this aerial view, we burn a patch and we leave a patch, burn a patch, leave a patch. Why? Because if you do it in a checkerboard fashion, you create more edge than burning that whole field and create edge around the perimeter. You got edges throughout that. And why edge? Wildlife likes edge. And I don't care if you're a quail or other bird species. If you're a black bass underwater, you like edge. If you're a deer, you like the edge of a woods, the edge of a field. So more edge, the better. So we created the edge by plowing around these checkerboard parts, and where we plowed, that plowed, you see its little green strips in that field. It came up in forbs, like in this area, woolly croton or doveweed. The yellow flowers came up on their own. The red flowers are gaillardia that we actually harvested. We have our own harvester. We harvested those seeds and planted them. And why is this scene so good? You got the native grasses that you can see up at the left and the right top. That's where the hen quail lays her eggs. And after gestation of 21 days, those chicks come out in that plowed area that's come up in forbs, or including these flowers, and they are like kids at a mall, in a shopping mall. That bugging site provides their food. Quail chicks rely on insects for almost 100% of their diet for the first 2 to 3 months of their lives. There's no seeds out there. Nobody's feeding those quail. They have to fend for themselves. But they can't run out there and get hammered by hawks or other predators. In this area of what we plowed and planted around the native grasses, they got free reign, and they got cover. They got an aerial cover. They got screening cover. They got their, what I call their MREs, their food to survive. I will mention that we have to use herbicides at times. I'm not a big fan of herbicides. But herbicides is a chemical. It's like water, just like water or whiskey. Life's about moderation. You can use too much of anything, and we only use it in a limited way. But let me say this: that even though I was a farm equipment dealer and I sold a lot of tractors and tillage equipment, it's many times better to spray the land with right amount, of course, of herbicide than it is to plow it. When you plow land, you also disturb the hydrology of that soil many times. You've got a lot of microbes in that soil if it's rich, if it's good land. You got microbes and earthworms you're disturbing and killing. So maybe, it's a better scenario than plowing, which, as I say, disturbs the hydraulics of the soil. Once the soil is prepared, and in the case of this picture, it's been sprayed. We have teams of what we call habitat action teams. We have 2 or 3 people that go out and put that seed in the ground, and we use a no-till drill to not disturb the soil, but to plant that native grass or cover crop seed in what was previously exotic tame grasses. Or we can plant cover crops, or maybe a winter cover crop in the summer cover crop that we've eliminated. So anyway, we use no-till drills. We have at our disposal 3 no-till drills, and at certain times of the year they're going full steam ahead. So that's the only way. That's the best way to put it in the ground. Native plants throughout tens of thousands of seed in an acre. And they hope that some of those seeds land in the right place. Man uses a different system. We put the right seed in the right place at the right time. The Wildlife Habitat Federation, these dots represent areas where we're working. That is an older picture. We're now in 31 counties, currently working on 40,000 acres. That includes 14,000, working on the 14,000 plot up on the Red River, where we're bringing back natives on about 4,000 of that 14,000 as a mitigation project. So these are where we're working, areas where we're working. In the middle of this slide, you'll see a green portion. That's the Atwater Prairie Chicken 10,000 acre refuge. At least 8,000 of it is shown in this picture. There's another 2 not shown over in Austin County, and right above it is our corridor where we connected to it. Let me go back to that picture. You'll see some dots in Harris County over in the right center of this map, and those red dots. You probably are asking why are you restoring native grasses in the city of Houston? And actually, those are pocket prairies. And our first pocket prairie was at MD Anderson at the corner of Holcomb and Fannin. And that was some of the poorest soil I've ever seen. I don't know how we ever got anything up, but anyway, we planted that, not using the big planters, but using other means to plant it, and it worked. And it took some techniques that I learned growing up on the farm, but we got it in, and the results were quite dramatic. Here's a picture. I think that's toward the children's hospital over on Fannin, but that's yellow Indian grass. And of course, there's a lot of other species growing out there today. But why pocket prairies? Well, I'll tell you, you got to show people, or you got to educate folks on how do you expect people to understand the virtues of having native grasses or restoring prairie land. We try to teach them, people who are in Houston, before they make their money and come out and buy a ranch or a ranchette. They understand they need to put in native grasses, or at least conserve the ones they have, rather than coming out there and buying a tractor and disking up and planting invasive species like Bermuda grass. So we want to catch them there in the city and teach the people again that Houston used to be part of a 9 million acre prairie that went from southwest Louisiana over through Houston, covered Houston and parts west of Houston. 9 million acres of it. So that's where we're doing a lot of our work, in that 9 million acre area, 100 miles north of the Gulf of Mexico and 100 miles up to 100 miles west of Houston. Well, these prairies, these pocket prairies are teaching people in Houston or educating them on how best, what the best thing is to put in your pasture lands when you come out to buy a ranch. It's not, you don't need a situation that exists in Houston like it looks like a golf course. You need these tall grasses. I once had a couple I convinced to put in native grasses, and the lady came in and she said, "Oh, I'm so glad you're talking to my husband about putting these native grasses and conserving our land." She said, "I asked you to do one thing, please, get rid of that tall stuff." And my answer to her was, I don't know why I thought of it. But I'm glad I did. But I said, well, we will. We'll put. How do you like wildflowers? Oh, love wildflowers. Well, we go plant some wildflowers out there for you. So we were able to conserve that land because she loved wildflowers, and we did plant wildflowers in one of the campuses there at Indiana. Just a scene of wildflowers, as I say, in the area north of Old Spanish Trail, one of their campuses. And I got a story about this one I got to tell you. People came from afar, all over the United States, and even some international guests to see this. And it wasn't just to look at the abundance of wildflowers that emerged after we planted them. It was to see that bird there, flocks of loggerhead shrike, which you don't see ordinarily anywhere. I'm not a good bird watcher, but I can't identify a loggerhead shrike. You just want to see flocks of them. There are flocks of loggerhead shrikes invading that area where these wildflowers were. And the answer to that, why they were there, wildflowers attract insects. And where a better place to find an abundance of insects than at this restored area at MD Anderson. Here's another pocket prairie that's at Katy High School. We helped them by planting cover crops like this summer cover crop of milo or grain sorghum and other species, brown top millet. There's quite a grocery list of seeds we planted there. And this is to prepare the soil, to get it right so it'll be better. It will only help eliminate the invasive species like Bermuda grass and prepare it for what we were to plant in native grasses. They won all kinds of awards. I wish more schools had such an outdoor classroom like they have at Katy High School. Got some very progressive people running that school. The principal is a good Midwesterner who understands native grasses, and they've got some brilliant teachers there that are pushing it. And this was before COVID-19. They had the outdoor classrooms, and they, like I said, they've won numerous awards from this. And I just advocate doing this at as many schools as possible. But you got to have some very progressive folks teaching at those schools to do this. But we'll work with them. We planted all the cover crops and the native grasses. This being a shot of a summer cover crop. Here's a winter cover crop. That's a field of oats. It's pretty evident that field of oats is shading out the invasives we're trying to control. And the beautiful part about that is that they shade it out and they keep sunlight from hitting the soil. Therefore, those invasives don't come back below readily. So that's the beauty of having a winter cover crop like oats, wheat, rye, barley, whatever, covering your land to keep those invasives in check. And again, this is a green herbicide. Picture of the oats, you can see that the root system is pretty good. It controls erosion. The middle part of this photo, it shows earthworm casings, making that soil friable again. And they tell me that a shovel full of rich soil contains about as many microbes or microorganisms as there are people on planet Earth. The right the right part of this slide is you can see a native plant emerging in that cover crop. Once that cover crop went dormant, we use our no-till drill to plant it. Another type of winter cover crop that's happens to be tubers like radishes and turnips. Pretty good for livestock, not bad for human food either. Another technique we're using is developing or is selection of the right seed. We're working with Texas Native Seed, part of Cedar Clayburgh and Texas A&M University, to come up with a seed that fits our particular needs. There's so many eco regions throughout Texas. There's also, just in Colorado County, I understand there's 1,300 soil types. So how can you expect a seed from Amarillo to work in Cat Spring, Texas? It won't. I mean, it won't persist in many cases. It'll stay there maybe a few years, maybe as much as 5, and then it's gone. So you got to have something that will persist. In summer, we found out in planting seeds that we collected all the way from Victoria, Texas to the Louisiana border and other places, that some of those seeds we were selling, getting them from seed dealers, didn't persist. They were some of the poorest performers out there, but we didn't know. So now we're working with people who are going to find a better seed for this particular zone. So you buy seed from someone who can supply you with pure live seed that is that works in your area for your soil types or your weather conditions. Here's another picture of that same seed plot where you can see the various types of natives we're growing out at a different stage of development. If we don't, until we get all the seeds selected that we think we'll need for our area, and we're growing about 6 different types of natives in this plot right now, and little blue stem, yellow Indian grass, silver blue stem, not bristle grass, just to name a few, and forb, rattlesnake master, trying to find the right seed. Until we develop or we grow out those seeds, we might select out of 100 seeds planted, you might select 2 that work. And until those are grown out by commercial seed dealers, we still have to sometimes harvest our own. Going down the road and finding a field of the right type of native grasses and wildflowers or forbs is certainly a great idea. If it grows down the road, it's going to grow where you are. So good to have equipment we can rely on that harvester was built for us in Billings, Montana. Those folks up there have been dealing with native grasses and forbs a lot longer and more successfully than we have in Texas. We've had so much land we've allowed to go downhill. It's better start now than later. So we have this ability to harvest grass seed or flower seed if we can't find someone selling the right seed to us. It's a daunting task. It looks to me, if I was for you looking at what I'm telling you today, but Ellen Sirleaf, former Nobel Prize winner, said, you got to dream big. If your dreams don't scare you, you're not dreaming big enough. So, even though what you may be doing out there as a master naturalist or gardener or whatever, you may not have a lot of land, but every little bit helps reach that big dream we all have to have as conservationists. I encourage you to keep it up. This picture tells it all. That horizontal board on that barn, the side of my barn, is the ground level. That's 10 feet above the ground. That's ground level for 3 species of native grasses: gamagrass, big blue stem, Indian grass. look at the length of those roots. That's 10 feet in 1 year of growth. Of course, they're growing them out, we grow them out in sand and sandy soil, but so massive. And that's why native grasses allow water to go down into the ground because of these roots, this root structure, instead of just running off the top. And you gotta give and if you don't, and it lets it going down into the ground, it certainly not only helps conserve water we need for in drought periods, because we have those every year in Texas. It also stores water that like we had the Hurricane Harvey. I'm not saying that native grasses, if we had a lot more native grasses around Houston, it would have mitigated that flooding. There's no way you would have stopped all that flooding from Hurricane Harvey. But what do we save 10% of the homes, or 15 or 20, because we had more native grasses? I just think that's a better way to hold water than digging big holes in the ground called reservoirs. If you can store close to the same amount with having big root systems below the ground, then so be it. That's the way it used to be. That's willing to do it again. Heard Morgan Freeman interviewing an Indian chief, and he said, treat your land not like a resource that is used and abused, but treat your land as a source of life. So that's what we're trying to do. If you can dream big, as I said, if you can conceive it, we'll help you do that at the Wildlife Habitat Federation. Establish a game plan. We can, and you believe you can do it, there's no doubt you can achieve it. We did it on our property, and I know you can do it or help other people or guide us in that direction. So that's all, folks, and I hope I didn't go too quickly, that you were able to get something from the idea that if you, as I said, if you conceive and believe it, you can achieve it. Let us help you do that, and I encourage all of you that whatever amount of conservation you're doing, you might consider it to be too small. Nothing is too small. We all have to pitch in and do our share. Please come out to the Wildlife Habitat Federation and see what we're doing. Call me, contact us. That's our website. Go on it, and hopefully there's some information there that you can use. And it's a learning process. I learn every day, but I'm glad I'm in this community and not one that was formerly there selling equipment to destroy or to destroy the land, but in a situation now that we can all work together to conserve our precious natural resources. Okay, as said, Shell and Rebecca, and I don't know what my timing is, but any questions, I'm open for any questions any of you may have.
Thank you so much, Jim. It was really great. I am personally inspired, actually, and have some questions of my own eventually. But we do have a couple of questions from the audience. Texas has miles of land and oil and gas pipeline easements. Do you see any opportunity that the oil and gas industry would permit these lands to be used for carbon capture and or wildlife habitat? This is from Clarence Reed of the Native Plant Society of Texas.
Absolutely. There's no piece of dirt in Texas that should be off limits to conservation. And I know for a fact that Texas Native Seeds, the group that is testing different seeds on our ranch, are working more with those types of people. Those right-of-ways are what a wonderful opportunity to plant those right-of-ways in something that holds more, to sequesters carbon. It's just a matter of teaching those people. And another big problem we've had is not having enough seed to do that. All the roadsides that need to be planted with the right stuff are another opportunity. Some of the best native sites today are from Louisiana across this area of Texas I've seen are railroads side right of ways. They're not destroyed by overgrazing, obviously, and the only problem with those are the noxious woody cover that comes up in them. So they mow these right of ways. Why not put them into permanent native grasses and wildflowers? That I just think that's a wonderful idea, and take away those shredders I used to sell and replace them with no-till planters. And it's just showing the people, like that man I mentioned earlier that was going down to replant all this land in invasive species. I don't know what kind of word, but leaving them in natives or planting more natives. And like Lady Bird Johnson did with the roadsides, let's do it with those right of ways, by all means.
Thank you. So my question actually is, what is the time frame, even for a pocket prairie? Are we talking in several years, a decade? What is the rough time frame? Something useful.
Glad you asked that. As I said earlier, native grasses are perennials that just don't come up like a crop that you plant an annual, like wheat or rice or some of the commercial crops that we grow. They sometimes take 5 years for some species to germinate. Consequently, you just be a better plan for it by planting a mixture of native grasses, locally harvested grasses, with a certain percentage of commercial seed. Commercial seed being seed that was native grass that was selected of the type you're planting that will come up there to do the same work, but there's no replacement, I don't think, for having locally harvested stuff. But the commercial stuff, in many cases, comes up more quickly. So you want some of that to cover the ground. If you don't cover the ground really quickly, then the invasives maybe come back. So I would say that by combining a percentage of commercially bought seed with native grass seed, you probably get something to emerge the first year. But the real stuff, the stuff you really want out there, may take 3 or 5 years to come up. Now, we expedite that by doing such things like we did at MD Anderson, and there's irrigation facilities there. So that native grass seed was waiting for the right amount of moisture. If you have supplemental irrigation and some of those pocket prairies, you can expect some of those seeds to germinate much faster. We got coverage the first year, most all of the stuff we planted, and more every year after that. So it just depends on the type of seed, your ability to provide some of those, most of those seed needs, and most of that being water, and planted in the right conditions and the right time of the year. So my answer is not it's going to come up 1 year or the first year, or I would say in most cases it's get a little bit every year. And nature does that, but for protection purposes. If you had all the grass coming up the first year and you had a major drought, or too much, or another hurricane Harvey that land that stayed inundated with water a long time, you might lose most of your seed, all of it. So having a little come up first, a little later, and a little bit later, so expect pocket prairies, you can control it better with irrigation, but most times I tell people to be patient. And if you're not patient, don't even try to grow native grasses, because we don't sell that. You only get if you want instant gratification, I would suggest going to Walmart or McDonald's. We just don't sell it here. But it may take 5 or 7 years sometimes, but you should be able to get something right off by combining commercially purchased seed with locally harvested stuff.
Great, thank you. So we have a couple more questions here from Pat Ricks. The Texas Parks and Wildlife Department and NRCS, sorry, advise using glyphosate. I don't know if I'm saying that right.
Glyphosate, yes.
Yes, to kill Bermuda and Klein before planting the native seed. Do you agree?
As I said earlier, I'm not a big fan of herbicides, but it treats the glyphosate, commonly called Roundup. It has a bad name and because people use it incorrectly. What doesn't hit something green dissipates into a gas, but it's a lot better to, in many cases, to hit it with glyphosate and kill it. The total root system of that introduced grass. You'll spend years and years trying to get rid of the Bermuda grass and Bahia grass, plowing it. It's almost an impossibility. I'm resorting to a herbicide that doesn't disturb the hydrology of the soil, as I said, or kill the beneficial microbes, microorganisms, and earthworms is a better scenario than just plow. So yes, and depending on what kind of soil it is, you'll use different amounts of glyphosate. We use as much as 4 quarts or a gallon per acre with lots of water in this area where we have sandy soils. So it varies by soil types. It may take a couple of treatments, but again, it's better to do that than it is to plow that land over and over to get rid of that invasive growth. Okay. I'm not hearing Shell.
I was muted.
Okay.
So a question, we are preparing a pollinator garden in our school, but I have questions concerning native wildflowers, weeds, and others. In your website, do you give advice to novice gardeners, or do you have a suggested website where people can get that kind of basic information? What would you suggest?
And I'm sorry, was that information needed for purchasing seed? Is that what I understand the question was about?
I believe for planning and for decision making as well as purchasing the seeds.
Yeah, we have a team of biologists that go out and we do charge to have them go out and look at property, but let me tell you, you get what you pay for. And when I first started with my methodology was fail fast and fix fast, and that didn't work too well. But get somebody to come out and look at it if you got time. But yeah, there's a lot of good help out there. There's government help with Texas Parks and Wildlife and others that's free. So get some of these kind of folks out there and look at and boy, I love to see people having their own backyard of natives it's you can collect your own seed in places, and but there are some very good seed dealers in for native flowers and a lot for native grass in Texas. But yeah, feel free to contact us through this website, and we'll help you guide you in the right direction where to find the supply of the right seed. And there's seed for this area. There's seed being produced locally. I mean, down at Eagle Lake is the largest, I guess, area for production of native wildflower seed in the state. But there's a lot of good suppliers in the state, and we'll help you with that. And what's so fun about it is once you learn how to sow it, you can collect your own seed and plant your own seed. That's in your own backyard, pocket prairie.
Thank you. So I have a question from Shannon Westover. Do you offer some of the wild parts of your property for seed collecting efforts by TMN volunteers for those of us working on restoring pocket prairies in urban and suburban areas?
You bet. And Shannon is a great example. She and her husband have a great pocket prairie in their backyard. It's just phenomenal to see these plots growing down in Missouri City. And yes, Shannon, you know, certainly people that are passionate about growing these native plants, we can help guide you in areas where you can collect some of these seeds. You know, it's amazing where they're growing. There's lots of native remnant or relic tracts of native grasses around here where we are, but there's some in other areas too. But yes, I would invite you to come out. We had a groups of master naturalists come out to this plot where we're growing out seed and help us collect those seeds. But you know, we have a remnant tract, you know, by our place, and there's, you know, obviously what you'll find wild seed, wildflower, and native grass plants all in this whole area where we are out here. You'd be surprised where you might find it. I heard of one plant that people were looking for years was growing over there by the Astrodome, and some crack and cranny there that people had mowed. So there's just be on the look for it. But yes, I certainly will share seeds with anybody that wants to come out to our area. And I know the same is true with other organizations. I know that the Katy Prairie Conservancy has they let people come out, you know, and collect or help them collect seeds there. But yeah, there's many relic tracts. I hope I hope they hadn't all gone by the wayside that we harvest seed from in our area. And one year we harvested native grass seed on, I think, 17 different tracts around us. And by the way, Shannon, I mentioned your name because I think you and Scott have done a wonderful job of with putting a pocket prairie in your backyard, or two of them, I think now you have two. So maybe you want to share that. Maybe sharing too much information, but you know, I think you'd probably like to show that to other people, how beautiful a native grass, native flower track can be as compared to going, you know, you're going to Texas, with Texas natives rather than just buying any kind of plant. You know, they're gonna look good and they're gonna survive. So I think that's what more of us can do. Have these, do some more Texascaping around our houses and our backyards. That all helps pollinators for sure.
Great. So any other questions? I don't see any open. Oh, Rebecca has a question. Give her a moment. Communicate by sign language. Carrier pigeon.
Let's say garden as if life depends on it. Absolutely. Yeah. Treat your land not as a resource, but as a source of life. Exactly. And somebody's life depends on it. You know, it's amazing, as I said earlier, when you provide habitat, you realize how dependent these wildlife species are on those native plants. As I mentioned earlier, we found 31 species of birds not accounting other types of wildlife once we restored it. And you can do that in your, whether it's your backyard pocket prairie or in several hundred acres out in the rural area. It's just, why have land if you can't enjoy it? And it's great. It feels good to know that you're, people talk. I know that Rebecca is very much involved with monarch butterflies. It's not just, they're not the only thing, but we talk about providing milkweed for them to lay their eggs. But, having all these species of native forbs out there for nectar, they got to have that energy. That's a long trip they make to Mexico. So everybody there along the way, they can put in a few more wildflowers or native grasses, or it's going to help provide life. And that it's just part of balance of nature. Something may eat that migrating butterfly, but that animal is beneficial to some other animal. It's just it's these insects and these animals are the glue that holds nature together. So we are providing that those pocket prairies, whether it be in your backyard or working with a school or other areas, we put in pocket prairies. Not only in Indiana, I mentioned in that school, but we've done it. We planted pocket prairies at the Exxon Mobil facility, new campus in Pearland, and just very, very many areas. And hope that education will show people the beauty of having more wildlife attracted because of those pocket prairies.
Thanks, Jim. We have a couple more questions here, actually. I have someone who has asked, how big is a pocket prairie? What is the definition?
Typically, it can be, the school that we worked with and the parks run usually around an acre, but it can be just the size of a bedroom in your house, that size. It can be small. It doesn't have to be any particular size.
Okay. A follow-up for that is, excuse me one moment, sorry. I'm about to start converting 112 acres in Fayette County to prairie. Does the Wildlife Habitat Federation help to make contacts to establish a wildlife corridor?
Oh, absolutely. And I encourage you to contact us and have a plan. As I told you earlier, I didn't have a plan. I thought that I could just do it by myself because, hey, I grew up on a farm. I know how to do this. No, I didn't. And if I had hired me, what I know today, to do it back then, I would save lots of money and a lot of frustrations. I learned a lot, but having someone come out and give you, talk to you, see your property, write you a wildlife conservation management plan, save you time and money, and probably what you pay to have somebody do that, or if you get them free, that's so much the better. Is when you've had to pay somebody, it's going to cost you less to pay that person to give you that management plan than it is to go try to do it on your own and make all those mistakes. So contact us, and you see our website here on the screen. I guess you still up, whf-texas.org. Contact us, and we'll be glad to help you not only suggest a management plan. Fayette County is certainly one of our targeted areas, but it also, we have the equipment to do it. So many people talk about it. I encourage you to find somebody that does it. Boots on the ground is the best way to get it done. And the only way, really, you can talk to death, but having a plan and using somebody that has the equipment and the ability to do it, the knowledge is so important. And I would say get somebody that actually has the equipment, the specialized equipment needed, and you're gonna have a lot more success that way. And especially if you're dealing with 117 acres, you don't want to fool around with that. Getting the best way to eliminate your invasives and using cover crops. I put cover crops in there today because we have found, even some seed dealers didn't realize that cover crops are so important to restoring your property. And we used cover crop when I was a kid on our property because we did it for to increase the yield of our crops. Planted cover crops, green manure crops. Switched over to commercial fertilizer later, but you know, having somebody that can come in and plant no-till cover crops, winter cover crops especially, and then plant those native grasses behind that, you're gonna get a lot better results than just going out there and planting without that preparation. Planting the right seed is important too. There's a lot of people out there selling seed. Make sure you buy on the basis of pure live seed, not just bulk seed. Get the right seed, the right mix for your particular area, and use the right equipment, the right people to put it in. Contact us, get in touch with us, use that website. We'd be glad to help you, or suggest somebody else that can. If there's somebody else that can do it better, I'll suggest it.
Thank you. So we are about to do the raffle. I've done the drawing, and the winner today of the book is Sutton Taggart, who I will contact shortly and ask for their address. And we will send you a copy of David Mizejewski's book, Attracting Birds, Butterflies, and Other Backyard Wildlife. I believe that we are at time, just almost exactly. Rebecca, do we have time for one more quick question? Yes. Okay. So the question that I see in the box here is for Jim. Are you going to have a workshop at Cat Springs this spring? Cat Spring. Sorry.
The one spring.
One spring. Yes.
Well, you know, with COVID-19, we had to delay a lot of that. My hope is we can, whenever it's practical and safe. I think those workshops are certainly necessary. Seeing it is believing it. And if you come out and you can see where we've done this kind of work, makes it a lot more meaningful. And I can tell you, I've met some of the finest people I've ever known in my life by having these workshops, people like yourselves that have the passion. And so we need those workshops. And I haven't gotten one. I have not scheduled one yet for this spring, sort of waiting on to see where we're going with the COVID-19 process. But yeah, stay tuned and please do come. Seeing is believing. You can talk about it, we can study it, we can research it. I think they've researched how to bring back the bobwhite quail for 6 decades. But you know what? Nobody ever did it. Nobody ever put the happening on the ground, which is hard for me to understand how we can research it for so long without doing it. But Lenny Brenham, you know, it takes him and in South Texas said, you know, there's 3 factors that are going to bring this stuff back. The 3 factors to bring back quail and other upland birds. They are habitat, habitat, and habitat. So coming out and seeing the right habitat and what we did to bring it back, or bringing it back, how we're bringing it back, is necessary. And we've got to show you what we've done out here. So yes, we will have another field day or field days. So spring's a good time. But don't hesitate to call me if you want to come on your own. If there's a possibility, I'll be glad to show you.
That's great. So where are you exactly? You are near Houston.
We're west of Houston, and west of Sealy, about 15 miles west of Sealy in the prairie, in the edge of the prairie, and before the Oak Savannah begins. So we go out Interstate 10, for example, 10 miles or so, and we're off of Farm to Market Road 949 at 3295 Farm to Market Road 949. Just north of Bernardo, a little store there in Bernardo, feed store in Bernardo. We're right north of that, about 2.5 miles on 949.
Great. Jim, thank you so much for sitting in, for showing us your work, for sharing that with us. Thank you to everyone for being here on a Saturday and giving us your time and attention. You have a lot of other things going on, I'm sure. Rebecca, I think we're out. Are we good? Okay, thanks everyone. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.